Hello friends, welcome to the Mongolian Adventures Podcast, a place for stories about Mongolia for adventurous kids. Get comfortable, snuggle in, and let's begin.
Let's begin.
Minjin slowed her breathing as much as she could, even as her heart raced under her gray fur, sounding loud and fast in her ears. Her paws shook as she tried to steady the small pair of mouse-sized binoculars that she held in them. The sand shifted beneath her, and she tried to steady herself to keep from slipping down the small hill they were laying on, their bellies on top of scratchy brown and green grass mixed with sandy dirt. Her whole body felt tense, curled up tight with anticipation mixed with fear. Handa lay next to her, her own binoculars steadily focused ahead. She looked calm and cool, not a shake to be found in her paws or ears. Minjin took a deep breath, reminding herself that Handa knew what she was doing. She might not have ever faced a bear that wanted to eat her, but Handa didn't seem to be worried, so surely that meant something. A shiver ran down her again at the thought. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. I am doing this, she thought to herself. A steady word of encouragement to her brain, a hope that the words would calm her body down as well. She was here, crouched in sandy, scrubby dirt, watching the feeding spot and waiting. Observing, not watching. She corrected herself in her mind, remembering the scientific word that Handa had taught her that morning, over a cup of tea in the cool desert morning. They weren't watching, they were observing, taking note of everything happening, gathering information, seeing what they could find out and see. But waiting, there was no fancy word for waiting. They were observing, which so far to Minjin had just involved waiting and trying not to throw up from nerves. She wasn't sure how much longer she could look at the food prepared for the bears before she felt like she was turning into the food herself. Here, bears, here I am, a nice tasty mouse laying on the ground waiting for you to find me, observing you for you to find me. She laughed to herself then, realizing how her thoughts were turning into a tornado of worry. Her mom had always used to tell her that taking a moment to laugh at how her worries were creating a storm within her would help the winds of fear die down. So Minjin let herself smile at herself, took a deep breath, and closed her eyes for just a moment, picturing herself in the busy aisles of her first home, the crowded spaces of Nadantol Market, far, far away from bears who wanted to gulp her down as a snack. Do you see it? Handa's whisper interrupted Minjin's thoughts, and her eyes flew open, steadying the binoculars before her so she could peer through them and into the distance of the flat brown land before them. Her breath caught in her chest. Yes, she could see it. There before her was a medium-sized brown bear, walking slowly in their direction. She nodded her head towards Handa and turned her focus back to the bear. This was fear rising up in her throat. This was her heart pounding in her chest. This was her muscles stilled not to move. The bear ambled forward, unconcerned and not the least bit nervous. Must be nice, thought Minjin. He headed directly towards the food laid out by the humans who worked for the Gobi Bear Project and the Mongolian government. They didn't want to have to feed the bears, Handa had explained, but there hadn't been enough water in years, leading to not enough plants and food for the bears to eat. These feeding sites were a way to make sure the bears were getting enough food to survive, but not so much that they would stop looking for food themselves. It also led to the next part of the plan, which Minjin was waiting to see with her breath held. The bear entered the space where the food was set up, and the trapdoor shut, trapping the bear inside. Her breath whooshed out of her mouth, her lungs expanding heartily, and Handa rolled over and sat up, stretching her arms and paws as she did so. And now the work begins, Handa said with her normal anticipation, as she greeted every opportunity for information with the enthusiasm of a young mouse about to eat chocolate-covered cheese. What now? Minjin asked, even though she remembered the outline of the plan Handa had shared that morning. She wanted to hear the words again, to shake off the cobwebs of fear that still hung around her brain and reach down to the tops of her gray paws. Now the humans will come forward to give medicine to the bear that will make it go to sleep. After the bear is safely asleep, they will take a series of measurements to see how healthy it is, and then they will put a GPS tracker around its neck. This will allow them to collect all sorts of data about where the bear is going, eating, living, and sleeping. Handa rubbed her paws together in excitement. And my friend is going to pass that data along to me as she sees it, since she can get closer to the humans and overhear what they are recording and saying. She's also going to pass on some of their GPS data to me tonight when we meet her at her camp. Minjin watched carefully as what Handa described unfolded before them. The humans carefully approached the bear, giving it a shot of medicine, watched the bear fall asleep, and then the humans sprang into action, giant versions of the energy Handa had at all times, their excitement and focus rolling off of them, evident to Minjin even from a distance. Hello, hello, hello! Minjin jumped as another mouse approached, wearing a wide-brimmed hat that covered most of her face and neck, boots, bandana, and a vest completing her desert Indiana Jones look. Isn't it a beautiful day for research? The mouse grinned at Handa and Minjin. Couldn't be a better one, grinned Handa as she jumped up and gave the new mouse a big hug. How are you, Bolter? I am in my happy place, she answered, tilting her head back for a laugh. Knee-deep in sand and dirt, a dusty notebook in my hand, and a gigantic bear that would normally want to eat me being weighed and measured. Science is happening. Handa and Bolter linked arms and started walking, their conversation picking up pace, scientific terms tossed out with an alarming speed that Minjin couldn't follow, much as she tried. She grabbed her own backpack off the dirt and wiped it off, slinging it on her shoulder and following behind them, listening for sentences she might be able to puzzle through herself. Even as they reached the camp where Bolter had pitched her tent, the women kept speaking, comparing notes scribbled on their ragged notepads and asking each other long, detailed questions. Minjin was impressed by their energy, her own body starting to feel the exhaustion of spending half the day terrified and in the hot, dusty sun. They gathered around the campfire, cups of tea in their hands as the sun started to go down, a cool wind blowing around them. Even Handa and Bolter were quiet as they looked at the flames, content to relax for a moment. Can I ask a question? Minjin asked, interrupting the silence. Of course, Handa said, nodding. Questions are how we learn. Why are we helping the Mazaalai? Minjin cleared her throat and continued. They are an animal that tries to eat us with each chance they get. Why do we want them to survive? An excellent point, Bolter nodded. If we think about it in terms of just our own survival as mice, then it doesn't make much sense to care about the Mazaalai. But we have to think outside of ourselves to understand what their survival means for all of us. Handa nodded, picking up where Bolter paused. The Mazaalai are critically endangered. That means that they have a very, very high chance of dying out. Right now, there are less than 40 Mazaalai left in the entire world. All of them live here in this part of the Gobi Desert in our home of Mongolia. 40! That's it! What does it mean to care? Bolter asked, her eyes thoughtful and her tail tucked up under her feet. Climate change, mining companies, the increase in big animals being brought here by humans to find grass, all of these things are changing the Gobi. When the Gobi changes, it makes it harder for the Mazaalai. It also makes it harder for all of us. Handa looked at Minjin gently. If we care only for ourselves, we lose the beauty of the community. We are all a part of this place. Whether you live in the Gobi or not, you are connected to the mice and other rodents who live here. And really, you are connected to the other animals, plants, and humans who call this place home. Bolter interrupted. We can take it even bigger than that, she said. All of us are a part of this puzzle called Earth. When one of us or a group of us is facing harm, we have to care. We have to work for them and their survival. Because what happens when we start caring? We all only live for ourselves if we stop, and we fail to see how our choices cause harm for others. This world works only when we can grow our caring from ourselves and our group to all of us who live and breathe on the earth. Minjin looked at the fire's sparks and the faces of the two scientists sitting in front of her, the ones working to find the numbers, the words, the pieces that would tell all of us how we could make better choices, how we could listen to the earth, its animals, its changes, and hear how we could help. "So what did you find out about the bear?" she asked, anticipating the flurry of conversation that would fill the space that was now quiet. She would learn, she would listen, she would help, because together, scary Gobi bears and all, they were better. Together, the world was a more beautiful place, for tiny mice looking for homes, and Mazaalai looking for water and food. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Mongolian Adventures podcast. You can find more information about the podcast, as well as lesson plans for educators, at www.mongolianadventurespodcast.com. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Mongolian Adventures Podcast. And on Twitter, we're at Mongolian ADV Pod. We'd love for you to draw a picture or create artwork based off of today's story. Send us your pictures at mongolian.adventures.podcast@gmail.com, and maybe you'll see it featured on our social media. Until next time!
May your adventures be big and your dreams even bigger.